What is up, everyone? We're back again with another end of month vlog. Sorry, this one is a little bit late, but I've just been very busy the past few days. And this is going to be for September 2023. And this is just me going over all the movies and TV shows I've watched in the past month. So let's just get into it with the first thing that I watched in September. So first off, I watched Joyride. Now this was kind of a road trip movie where four friends go to Asia and one of them wants to find their birth mother, and along the way they just get into all sorts of shit. And I thought this was quite a funny movie. You know, it's kind of got so many very Hangover type traits going for it, where the characters are just getting into all sorts of trouble, and the characters are the ones that you sort of expect, really. There's one who's quite sensible, there's one who's really weird, there's one who's just into sex and stuff, and there's one who's tried to go along the right path, but she's got a little bit of a past there. And you know, there's just some fun shenanigans along the way. So yeah, I found this to be a really funny comedy movie. It wasn't great or anything. It's very, very generic, if you like. But overall, I quite enjoyed it. It was fine. So that is Joyride. Next up, I watched Rise of the Foot Soldier: Vengeance. Now, I've done a full review for this on the channel. I'll leave it in the link down below. And this is Nick Nevin with his second Rise of the Foot Soldier movie. I think he really picked up the franchise with Rise of the Foot Soldier Origins, and he continues it here. I don't think this is quite as good as Origins, but it's really a competent Rise of the Foot Soldier movie. And this just sees Craig Fairbrass on a rampage here once again, and that's what we come to these movies for, isn't it? He is a very underrated actor. I feel like he probably should be in mainstream movies a little bit more. I know he was back in the day. He was in Cliffhanger and Kick-Ass and stuff, but I just wish he had some bigger roles there, because the guy is got this commanding screen presence. You just can't take your eyes off him, and here he's doing what he does best by just kicking ass, basically. And he's on a bit of a revenge mission for one of his friends who's been killed. Now, I like the way Nick Nevin sort of introduced a little bit of a mystery aspect to this, because there's this character who's kind of turning up now and again, but we don't quite see who it is till the end, so I liked that. It's part of the story, but it's basically just what you expect. It's Craig Fairbrass going after people and leaving a bloody trail, really, and it was fine. You know, I enjoyed it. And like all these movies, I get a kick out of them. But it's definitely one of the better Rise of the Foot Soldier movies. I'd say it's in top 3 with Origins and the first film. So that is Rise of the Foot Soldier: Vengeance. Next up, I watched The Nun. And we did have The Nun 2 coming out, so I decided to go and check this one out. It's one of the few Conjuring movies I hadn't seen. There's another one, which I'll speak about in a minute. And this started off really well, actually. I really liked the visual quality of the movie, the cinematography. I liked how the set design was out. It all felt like a very nice looking horror film. And it was a nice build-up, I feel, for the first 30 minutes. Teresa Farmiga, I was getting a little bit mixed up because I thought this was meant to be Vera Farmiga's character, because it takes place in the timeline where she will be about that age. But it isn't. She's a totally separate character. She just looks very like her. But she was great in the movie. But this basically is just about this abbey, and something's going on there. So her and this priest are going to investigate it. And the last hour of the movie sort of takes place in the abbey. And it just slowly goes downward for me and becomes a little bit of a dull and boring movie, unfortunately. Now, Valak is a great demon. He is probably the best looking demon in the Conjuring universe, and they utilize him well, you know, when he's coming out the shadows and stuff like that. But overall, it was just a very generic, you know, demon movie that we get all the time, but a little bit more of a boring one, unfortunately. So I didn't quite hold high hopes for the second one after seeing this, but it's watchable, just not very good. So that is The Nun. And next up, we have the other Conjuring movie I hadn't seen, and that was The Curse of La Llorona. It follows some very similar story beats with The Nun, where it just kind of lingers around and doesn't quite know what to do with itself after a promising start. I think the demon in this was very sinister, where it's drowning children and stuff like that. That was interesting, I thought. But again, it just doesn't know what to do with itself. It's just there to make money, I feel. And the family that we follow in this wasn't the most interesting. And it just becomes a little bit of a CGI fest in the final act, kind of like The Nun did. And I just didn't really care for it all that much. These two are probably the weakest in the Conjuring universe for me. Yeah, I'm glad I've seen it now, but I have no plans to return to this anytime soon. It was just one of them chained out demonic movies that we get all the time. Now, speaking of demonic movies, demonic possession movies, we do have The Exorcist. Now, I wasn't really a huge fan on this movie growing up, but the more times I rewatch it, the better it gets for me. And this time, it was definitely the best time I had with this film. I can see all the little bits of writing coming together here. The slow burn build up really works because the deterioration of Regan following these scenes and how she's getting worse and worse is just a brilliant, great build up to the third act. The whole 180 head turn scene for me this time was the scariest part of the movie because I didn't actually realise that that was something to do with the director falling down the stairs, so that just chilled me to the core. I can see this why people hail this as a masterpiece now. I've done a full review for this over on my horror channel, which I'll leave down below if you want to go and check it out. But I seen the genius of this time. My only problem was actually the third act where all the crazy shit starts to happen with Regan vomiting on the priest and stuff like that. That was a little bit goofy to me. It was all a build-up that I enjoyed a hell of a lot more this time. So that was a little bit unfortunate. But the third act does feel dated in places. But great performances all around. This is some stellar cast here. Linda Blair is magnificent, but Ellen Burstyn was the big standout for me. And you got Jason Miller as the young priest in this, who's great. Father Damien Karras. And there was some really chilling scenes in this as well, got building up to it with Pazuzu's face just flashing on the screen, and then I seen him in the kitchen just flashing on. I don't know if that was added in the director's cut or something. The spider walk scene, all iconic horror movie moments. So The Nun and Curse of La Llorona, this is how you make a demonic possession type movie. So The Exorcist, I am a lot more of a fan than I used to be now. So yeah, that is The Exorcist. Next up, we have The Nun 2. Now, I gotta be honest, this was a really surprising movie for me. After seeing the first Nun film, I didn't expect anything coming from this one, but I was quite surprised. We have a lot more story here. There's kind of two stories going on. Instead of just following the same characters, we follow Teresa Farmiga and her new best friend, and then we follow something that's going on in this school. And these two storylines sort of meet in the middle in the third act. But again, visually stand out. I mean, I think the movie looked great. We have much better characters in this one. And far more creepier moments, like the jump scares and stuff, they are kind of what you see all the time, but I think they're done a little bit more better than your usual. And I just had a lot more fun with this one. The Nun was great again, once again, Valak. He's one of the best looking demons in the entire Conjuring universe, and this is no exception here. But I just feel like we got a hell of a lot more in this film compared to the first one. It's a much more improvement, and I actually have it in my top 3 Conjuring movies. There's just a lot more to like here. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more to keep you invested. It's never really boring or dull. There's always something going on. So for Valak to return to get this thing that he wants and will stop at nothing felt a lot more dangerous. So yeah, I just think this is a vast improvement. And I'm going to give it my new release of the month, believe it or not. So one of the biggest surprises of 2023 so far. Next up, I watched The Little Mermaid. And me and my wife were going to see this at the cinema, but we decided to just wait for Disney Plus. I think a lot of people actually did. And I got exactly what I thought I was going to get. It was fine. It was just an okay movie. I turned to my wife and just said that was all right, wasn't it? And she went, yeah, it was fine. And that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Halle Bailey was really good as Ariel, it must be said. I thought she put an excellent performance in here. I just don't think it was all that great in the visual department. Like Sebastian and Flounder did not look all that great in my opinion. It just looked so weird at times, especially Sebastian. And they didn't feel like the fun, eccentric characters they were in the animated film. There wasn't much character to them, and part of this I think was the way of because of the way they looked. It's got a good little story going on. It's typical Little Mermaid movie. It is a little bit longer than that animated film. I don't think it needed to be. I thought Melissa McCarthy was really good as Ursula in this film, to be honest. I don't really expect much from her, but she was actually really good in the role. It was just a fine movie, like a lot of these live action version Disney movies are. I know I'm on my own here, but I think Beauty and the Beast was actually amazing. And that's the only one that's really stood out to me a lot. I mean, The Lion King was kind of forgettable, and I'm always going to go to the animated one. This is kind of the same. It's okay, but I'm probably going to go to the animated version next time if I'm going to watch it. So unfortunately, it was just. I say unfortunately, I had an okay time with it. It was fine. Next up, we have a much better Disney movie, and this is a Disney Pixar film, and that is Toy Story. Now, I put this on for my young lad because he's just constantly watching the same thing. If you must know what it is, it's a program called Blue's Clues. I thought, you know what, the colour on Toy Story and stuff might stand out to him a little bit. And he sat there for about 10 minutes and watched this damn thing with me, and I thought, oh, he might like this. And then he just kind of wandered off and done his own thing. But I actually sat there and watched the whole damn movie, and I absolutely loved it. This is a film for everyone. Everyone can just sit there and watch Toy Story and have a great time. You all seen this movie before, haven't you? I mean, it's just basically Woody, who's Andy's favourite toy, and then Andy gets this new toy, Buzz, and Woody starts to get a little bit jealous there, and we just see this whole character development thing going on. But what this movie squeezes into its 1 hour and 20-minute runtime is just genius to me. There's so much going on. There's so many great characters. I absolutely love Ham and Rex. I love that moment where the kids are bringing the toys to the house and they're all getting a bit worried in case some toys are going to replace them. And Rex goes, "Are there any dinosaur-shaped ones?" And Ham goes, "Oh, they're all in boxes, you idiot." It gets me every single time. But it's just a brilliant movie, and I love seeing the friendship of Woody and Buzz start to form after them really not liking each other, and everything just working out in the end. It's a brilliant movie, and because I've watched this now, I really want to go back and watch Toy Story 2, so that might be in next month's video. But yeah, I absolutely love Toy Story. It's one of the greatest films ever made, and this is going to be, of course, my older pick of the month. I was going to give it to The Exorcist, but the Toy Story, I got to give it to that one. So that is Toy Story. Next month, I watched from the older pick of the month to the Turkey of the month. I've never actually done a Turkey of the month, but if I was, it would be this movie, and that is The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Oh my God. What the hell was this, man? I've done a full review for this as well over on my horror channel if you want to go and check it out. I've got an Exorcist playlist over there. I'll just leave the Exorcist playlist down below in the description. But my God, this is possibly the worst movie I have ever seen in my life. I don't know what the hell the writers and the directors were thinking with this. I don't know how the movie studio passed it, but this is just an absolute disaster of a movie. So I can't even quite explain what the story is because it's too ambitious for its own good. And look, I like it when sequels go in different directions and stuff, but it doesn't keep any of the themes or anything of the first film. It basically just shits all over the Exorcist fans. Now this follows Regan, who feels like something still lurks inside her, so they're trying to communicate with this head device to connect with the demon, and this other priest is going around trying to connect with it too and find out where Father Merrin was years ago and how his death came to be, sort of investigating the death of him. And that takes him to Africa, and there's a load of locusts there, and he meets this guy who's talking about locusts and studying locusts because the form of the demon came in locusts years before, and locusts. The third act actually has just people screaming and shouting in the old house from the first movie with locusts flying everywhere. Stop making movies about locusts, man. Jurassic Park Dominion didn't work, and this one certainly doesn't. I think this might be the worst 2 hours of my life. Like, this is the most boring, dull 2 hours that I am never gonna get back, and that is a damn shame. I absolutely hated every single second of this movie. The performances was only Linda Blair was good in this. We had, the villain from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm really sorry, I forgot her name. Oh, God, it's gone out my head. Nurse Ratchet, Louise Fletcher. Even she couldn't save it. She was given nothing to work with. The main guy, the priest, Father Lamont, I forgot his name. I'm really sorry, I forgot his name. He was just so dull. He didn't want to be there. He always looked sad. Oh my God, this movie was just horrible. I hated it. It's got to be the worst movie I've ever seen. I don't know how they came about making it, but it was just an absolute disaster. And people who were in the early screens of this actually said the people who made this movie are in this movie theatre now and chased them down the road. That's how bad it is. Stay well clear of The Exorcist 2. Trust me. Next up, we have a comedy movie called Strays, and this is about a bunch of dogs who go on a little bit of an adventure. So one of the dogs is kicked out by his owner, and he's dropped off miles away, like hundreds of miles out the city, because he keeps coming back, and this owner doesn't want to know him. But the dog thinks that he does. He's just a game. So he sets off to go back to his owner with the help of these other dogs. And along the way, they just get into some mischief. It's kind of like Joyride, but with dogs. There's vulgar language and stuff. There's shitting on things and pissing on things. And yeah, it's a very silly movie. It's very, very stupid. But I had fun with it. A lot of people aren't going to like this film because of how pathetic the story is, and it's just talking dogs, but it's an adult movie, it's not for kids. I get it. But for me, I just sat there and had an okay time with it. It's like a 3 out of 5 movie. It was fine. Nothing much more to say on Strays, to be honest. There was some funny moments. It's watchable. It was fine. Next up, I watched The Exorcist 3. Another one I've done a full review on the Horror Channel. Now, I'd heard a lot of talk about this being a brilliant sequel, and some people even thought it was better than the first movie. So I went in thinking, okay, let's see what it's got to say. And this goes in a bold new direction. But unlike The Exorcist 2, it executes it a hell of a lot better. And this sees Detective Kinderman from the first movie, Father Dyer, who he makes a friendship with at the end. Not the biggest characters in the first film, but the main focus is them two in this movie, especially Kinderman. And these murders are occurring, and they're in the form of the Gemini killer, who was executed 15 years before this movie took place. So Father Kinderman is investigating all this, and there's some weird supernatural shit going on, which puts a little bit of a twist on the detective tale. And he basically wants to see, is the Gemini killer back, or is someone copycatting him or whatever? And it takes a very sinister turn. Things that he doesn't quite expect start to happen. Now, I won't say too much more than that, but this was a really cool detective horror thriller, I thought. There's a moment in a confession booth where this priest is killed, and I thought that was really creepy. This movie also contained one of the greatest jump scares ever put to film. If you haven't seen it, you're in for a treat here. William Peter Blatty, who wrote the first movie, directed this one. He actually wrote this as well. And it was meant to just be called Legion, but the movie studio said, no, try and turn it into a Exorcist sequel. And for a guy who was a novelist to put one of the scariest jump scares ever put to film on here just shows how talented he is. And he made a very competent movie. I don't think it's as good as the first film, but it was fine. I think the third act kind of loses its way a little bit. I had to look up what happened and then go and rewatch the last 30 minutes for it to make a little bit more sense. But Brad Dourif is great as well as the Gemini killer, but George C. Scott is the standout here as Kinderman. So it's a fine sequel that probably got a lot of disinterest back in the day because of how bad the second one was, but I quite enjoyed this. If I ever go back to it, I'll watch the Legion cut. That is The Exorcist 3. Next up, I watched a movie at the Scream Unseen called It Lives Inside. Now, this was a movie that had a unique spin on things with its storytelling. It used Indian mythology to get the whole story about this demon across, which I thought was interesting. And it's basically about this girl who's got this entity in the jar and it's trying to escape, and she's got to keep feeding it little bits of meat and stuff to keep it happy. And this entity just wants to get out. And finally, when it does, all hell breaks loose in this little town, basically. Now, I thought I liked the fresh approach with the storytelling and stuff. Unfortunately, it does borrow a lot from the generic demonic subgenre. So it's kind of a balancing act there, and it can't quite find the middle. One outweighs the other when it's going good, and when it's going bad, the other one starts to outweigh the other one. I thought this was okay. It was ultimately, it did fall down the generic route, but there was some interesting ideas there. I really liked the main young girl in this. She was fine, but the relationship with her mother and how that story arc goes was interesting, I thought, and the way it all plays out in the third act, I thought that was a good aspect of the film, but it was kind of forgettable. After I'd seen it, I thought, okay, that was good, and then the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, it was just fine. It was okay. So I've got a full review for this one on the Horror Channel as well. That is, It Lives Inside. Next up, I watched Taxi Hunter. Now, when I heard 88 Films were releasing this, and I read the plot synopsis, I just thought, yeah, I'm in. I'm buying that shit. And this is a Category 3 movie from Asia, or Hong Kong, is it? I think it's Hong Kong Category 3, where they have extreme labelled movies. And this was one of them. And this basically sees this guy who is being run down by these taxi drivers. And they're horrible people, the taxi drivers. They're trying to shortchange everyone and get double fares up to get them from A to B because people are desperate for taxis and stuff. And they're just not very nice people, all of them. And one of them is the responsible for this guy's pregnant wife's death. And he just decides to go on this rampage and start killing all these taxi drivers. It is exactly what it says on the tin, Taxi Hunter. I had a lot of fun with this movie. It was a good 90-minute entertainment, violent thriller fest. That's exactly what it is. And you know what? There was some really funny moments in this as well. There's this detective who's undercover in this movie, and he is hilarious. He just made me laugh so much with the way he puts his dialogue across and stuff, and the way he's acting. I thought this movie was really, really fun. I would watch it again. I'm glad to own it. And it's just one of them that, it's something different. I feel like, Asian cinema always does it. Even though it's a very simple story, it's directed in a very unique way, I feel. Just the way characters act and stuff, and the way it's filmed, the fight sequences. It's just fun, basically. That's what it is. So, yeah, I'm glad to have seen this. That is Taxi Hunter. Next up, I watched Pet Sematary. Now, we do have a Pet Sematary prequel coming, so I decided to go back and watch all of these films. And this was the original, a film that I've seen a couple of times. And I've never actually thought it was one of the greatest horror movies ever, but I always thought it was a very good horror film. And I had the same outcome this time. This follows Louis Creed and his family who moved to this new house. And there's a cemetery behind it, like this Indian burial ground. And if you bury your pets there, they will come back alive, but they're not the same. They're very sinister. Like the cat who he buries is sort of scratching his face and stuff and hissing at him all the time. And there's a family tragedy, and Louis Creed decides to bury one of his family members there. And you can guess what happens there now, can't you? It's the same deal for humans as it is for pets. But I think this movie has got so many creepy moments in it, like the Zelda, the story about Timmy Bateman, is it, who is buried there. This war veteran comes back and kills his dad and stuff like that. There's some very creepy moments in this film, and it goes for it. There's some hard-hitting scenes, especially with young Gage. If you've seen the movie, you know what happens there. And it's just like deaths around this family, unfortunately. We've got Fred Gwynne in there as Joe Grandel as the neighbour, who is definitely the biggest positive about this film. I've never heard anyone say the word road as good as he can. You stay away from that road. But yeah, a very, very dark film, put it that way. But one of the better Stephen King adaptations. It's a very competent Stephen King adaptation. I had a lot of fun with this. I've done a full review for this one on the Horror Channel as well. Sort of spoilerish if you want to go and check it out. It's a bit of a deep dive. I'll leave that down below as well. But that is Pet Sematary. Next up was a first time watch for me, and I watched Pet Sematary 2. Yeah, I watched the second one. I decided I was going to watch them all. So I've got a ranking coming on the Horror Channel, but this was one I was looking forward to because it had Edward Furlong in, and he was around the same age as he was in Terminator 2, and that's a movie I've grew up with all my life. So I was interested to see what he'd be like in another movie around that age. I think I've only ever seen him in American History X and Terminator 2. And he's excellent in that film. But this is... I liked how there was links to the first movie in this sequel, like the Lois Creed's family. He's kind of a local legend now where kids tell what happened to them around the campfire and stuff. It's kind of like a spooky haunted ghost story now, and a lot of this movie takes place around Halloween, which I thought was interesting. Mary Lambert actually returned to direct this as well, which I didn't actually know until I looked it up. And this follows a more fun vibe, I'd say, than the first film. I wouldn't say it's as dark or as creepy, although there are moments in this that do hit a little bit hard, especially in the third act. But this follows Clancy Brown, who is this arsehole, basically, and he is killed. And I think the kids have learned about this Pet Cemetery, Edward Furlong and his friend, and they don't want to get into trouble, so they kind of bring him back. And basically, he was already an asshole, so he's an even bigger asshole after he's coming back from this cemetery. And he's kind of just being so annoying in the house and just throwing food everywhere, killing all these rabbit pets that he's got and stuff like that. But it's done in a little bit more of a, I wouldn't say slapstick way, but a little bit more of a less serious toned way, if you like. It's a bit more of a fun vibe, this movie, compared to the first, because the first one is very, very dark. Edward Furlong was fine in this. You know, I thought he was a cool character, but that's all I can basically say. It's kind of just a Pet Sematary movie that has a lot of fun. So that is Pet Sematary 2. Next up, I watched No One Will Save You on Disney+. Now, I'd seen a few people on social media saying this is the greatest horror movie of the year. So I decided to check it out, and yeah, talk about a disappointment, man. I just do not get what everyone loves about this movie. It's a home invasion film, but it's aliens invading the home. And in the first 10 minutes, we see what these aliens look like, and they look terrible, in my opinion. So a lot of CGI going on and stuff. And that just took me totally out the film because nothing was really scary to me anymore. Even though it does build a little bit of good tension in moments and stuff like that, I just thought this was a very average home invasion movie, and it's got a little bit of a message at the end of the film where it's trying to get its point across, and I thought, oh yeah, that was kind of clever, but not something that I was cared all that much about. So yeah, I thought this was a 5 out of 10 movie at best. I just did not see what everyone else loved about this, unfortunately. I'm always up for an alien invasion film and stuff, but this one just didn't do it for me, unfortunately. That is No One Will Save You. Next up, we have the Pet Sematary remake. Now, I wasn't really looking forward to this because I remember not really liking it all that much the first time I watched it. But man, talk about being surprised on rewatch. This one definitely worked for me a second time around. Now, I don't think it's as good as the original, but it does some things better. Visually, it's way better. Like, the first one can look like a TV movie at times. And the fact that it's kind of turned on its head where the daughter in this one is buried at the cemetery. I thought she put in a great performance. She was very, very sinister. And that is when the movie goes around some really dark paths when she comes back. Doug Crandall wasn't as good in this one, but it's still a good take on the character. I just wish he had the same accents and stuff like that. But yeah, I thought this movie was really good. It has got its dark moments as well, like the whole when the young girl gets run over, it's all on her birthday and stuff, and all the family members are around. The final scene in this movie is spine tingling. Like I was like, holy shit, what a way to end the movie. I just remember it being not all that great, but this time I had a lot of fun with it. It looked great on 4K. Maybe that enhanced the movie for me as well. But I think Jason Clarke as Louis Creed was great in this movie. You know, I think he might be a better Louis Creed than Dale Midkiff was in the first film. Yeah, I enjoyed this a hell of a lot more this time. I gave it the same score on Letterboxd, even though the first one is slightly better, but I've found a lot more appreciation for this film now, this time around. So that is the Pet Sematary remake. And finally, we do have The Creator, starring John David Washington, and this is kind of bombing at the box office right now, unfortunately. And this cost $80 million to make, and it looks fantastic. Visually, stunning movie. It kind of makes you wonder how it looks this good with that budget, and Hollywood should take a leaf out of the book there and not just go all CGI and just throw money at it. Take a little bit of care and attention to detail, and you can get it totally right. And this kind of felt like Terminator 2 for me at times, mixed with a lot of other movies. I know everyone's been saying that, but that's exactly what it felt like. And we're like, I think it's 2060 or something, where androids are sort of living amongst the humans and stuff, and they're being hunted by the humans. Now, this started off really well. I thought the first 30 minutes of this, I thought, yeah, this is amazing. And then it kind of went into a character development thing with John David Washington and this young child for the second act of the movie, and then it picked up a little bit towards the end. I didn't love this film. I found it a little bit dull at times. It has its moments, like the first act, especially. The third act does pick up a little bit. It's just everything in the middle there just kind of flatlined for me a little bit. I think people may love this movie a lot more than me. I'm not really massive on big sci-fi adventures. It kind of got to be a certain sci-fi type of movie for me. I don't think John David Washington is all that great of a lead protagonist, in all honesty. He's okay in the movie, but I don't think he brings much charisma and stuff to the role every time I've seen him. Same with Tenet. So, unfortunately, he was just fine in the movie for me. He didn't really bring too much for it. Overall, I didn't love this movie. I give it 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is an okay score. So, that is The Creator. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this end of month vlog. What did you think of these movies? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see more end of month vlogs and all the horror reviews, they'll be down in the description as well. Thanks so much guys. You all take care, and I'll see you on the next video.